Our next guest is the executive chef of New York's Brasserie Les Halles and the author of this best-selling memoir of his life in the restaurant business entitled Kitchen Confidential. Here's Anthony Bourdain. Welcome to the program.
Happy to be here.
I can't tell you how much I enjoyed this book. It was fascinating stuff. It seems like a great, wild, exciting, colorful life, being a chef, being a cook, working in restaurants and stuff.
The child's dream of running a pirate crew.
Yeah. Now, you used to run a restaurant or had a restaurant right next door to this theater, right?
Yeah.
It was called Sullivan's, and you were hoping to cash in on that Ed Sullivan mania. What was the deal? Because everybody thought, well, great, this is nice. We have a nice restaurant here. But what happened to that?
Yeah, what a concept, an Ed Sullivan themed restaurant. Maybe that wasn't such a good idea, was it?
But I mean, it wasn't really a theme restaurant, was it?
Yeah, I guess. We never figured it out. Was it a nightclub or were we a restaurant? I mean, Ed Sullivan is not the first name that comes to mind, you know, rollicking good time and a good meal.
Yeah. How long was that in business?
I think about 2 years.
Yeah. Let's talk about where. Tell me the story from the book about the time that you first had an oyster. You're a kid. You're in France with your family.
Yeah, I was bouncing around France with my family. Actually, they were dragging me around. I was not happy to be there.
Right.
I was complaining. You know, the butter tastes cheesy. This milk is strange. I hate this food. And we were invited out on an oyster boat with a neighbor, and who suddenly reached into the water and pulled one out, cracked one open. And I saw my whole family kind of recoil in horror. And I think largely because I realized this is a real opportunity to shock and horrify my family. I'm going to give it a shot.
Right.
And it was great.
So you, as a kid, you just really loved it.
Yeah.
So that was the beginning. That a little light went off, and you said, maybe I have a life in food here.
Food has power to create an impression.
And then you spent a lot of time, I don't know, a lot of time, some summers working at a like a resort restaurant up in Cape Cod. Is that right?
Yeah, one of those places. You know, you've been there someplace like at a ramshackle seafood restaurant, fried clams, fried shrimp, French fries, diet, light cooking. And I was a dishwasher and just a summer job. And I looked over at the cooks, and these guys, they dressed like pirates, they carried big badass knives, they stole everything in sight, they drank for free, they had these incredibly prolific social lives, shall we say.
Sure.
That looked good to me.
Yeah. There's also another moment, I think, when you're working at one of these places when you had injured yourself working for a meal, and you asked a guy if there was like a first aid kit, or do you have any ointment or bacitracin lotion or something?
Right. Yeah, that's something you don't do in restaurants.
Yeah.
I mean, it was my first real job as a cook. I thought I was hot stuff. I'd worked a little bit in this knucklehead restaurant, and I went into a restaurant where they really knew what they were doing. It was very busy. And I was in the weeds, as we say, just terribly behind, and I burned myself on a hot sizzle platter, one of the things they put under the broiler, and I turned to the guy next to me and said, do you have a Band-Aid? And, it was just the worst moment. The whole kitchen went quiet, and the guy says to me, you want a Band-Aid, reaches under, grabs a sizzle platter, bare hand, puts it down in front of me, looking in my eyes the whole time. I just, slunk home and, thought about it.
Now, there was, let's talk about eating in restaurants. In New York City, we're like knee-deep in rats. Now, are there rats? Are there rats in restaurants in New York City?
Not my restaurant.
Yeah.
There are. I worked in a Mexican place years ago where they used to drag avocado pits and chicken bones up in the ceiling, and you'd be working, and suddenly the ceiling would crumble, and chicken bones and
from the rats.
Avocado pits would come down. They'd come scurrying across your feet. I had one. They'd eat poison, curl up on my shoes in the kitchen. Horrible. Are they that prevalent? Not that.
Now, is it possible to have a sanitary kitchen and also have rodents in it? You know what I mean? Can you cook reasonable meals and still have mice and rats and stuff?
If you save them for stock, make good use of them.
There's when comedians get together, they love nothing more than to talk about times that they have bombed, when they've gone out and for an hour gotten no laughs. Is it the same with cooks and chefs? Do you get together and talk about meals that you really screwed up?
We're all control freaks. We've all had at least one, probably more really terrible nights like that. And I think our whole lives are constructed in such a way as to avoid any possibility of that happening. I had one New Year's Eve at a big nightclub years ago that, people who'd ordered at 9:30 at night were walking in the kitchen around 12:30, walking themselves in the kitchen, looking behind the line and saying, is that my appetizer? And the waiters were hiding in the kitchen. when the kitchen's quiet, you know you're in trouble.
Now, if there is like a wise guy eating in your restaurant, do you like touch his food and lick the plate and that kind of thing?
Not a good idea. No, we give them what they want, and quickly.
There's a very funny story in here, and my impression from this is that people in your profession go from one job, one restaurant, to another job, to another restaurant, and just make a big swing in a circle through the city and then back again, and they keep doing it over and over again. And you go to an interview, and it's like a steakhouse. And things are going pretty good, and finally, the owner of the steakhouse asks you one question, and you think, well, geez, how exactly do I answer this, and screwed up the whole thing? Do you know what that is?
Yeah, the guy had a very thick Scottish brogue, and I desperately needed this job, and I was doing so well in the interview, and he says, well, what do you know about me? And I trying to figure out, what does he want me to say?
Is it a trick
flatter
question?
or what?
Absolutely.
I said, I decided to be honest, next to nothing, I said.
Right.
And, suddenly the interview's over, I'm on my way out the door. I thought, what did I do wrong? And I realized, he runs a steakhouse, and what he really asks is, what do you know about meat? And not the right answer.
Not much. Very little about what? About meat? No, nothing really.
And I was so
Had a
proud.
hamburger or two, that's it.
Yeah.
What do you think about these guys like Emeril Lagasse and those guys on the Food Network?
Well, you're asking me to, kick Santa Claus in the crotch on television. I mean, everybody loves the guy.
I'd pay money to see that.
Me too. A nice guy who runs great restaurants. I find the show excruciating. And most chefs I know, we see it, we want to jump out the window.
And what about also like the Iron Chef, that kind of thing?
I don't understand it, but it's cool.
Yeah, it is. It's exciting, isn't it? Now, if I would come to your restaurant tonight, or anybody comes to your restaurant tonight, and people do come to your restaurant, who's cooking their food? Are you cooking their food?
Not lately, no. I think the
You
best...
got a guy who does it.
I have a lot of guys to do it. I think the idea from television, people get the idea that the people cooking your food wear starch white jackets, they speak well, they're adorable and cuddly, like Emeril. In fact, they're more like a Mexican prison gang. You asked.
Well, bon appetit! It's a fascinating book. It's doing well, too, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice job. Kitchen Confidential, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for being here. Nice to have you with us. Anthony Bourdain.